Hey guys, I found the perfect live modular system. I have the vector sequencer controlling the Bitbox micro sampler, and I use the launchpad to be able to visualize all 8 tracks and see where the trigs are, and to have a tactile playing surface. The cool thing about using the vector is that I can control the pitch of each step. I can control gate and micro timing, the length of the steps, the repeat, the ratchet, the chants. Each track can have a different length of the sequence, and it can play in a different direction, like forward, backward, alternate ways, random. And I can generate patterns and also Euclidean generate. But this system has its drawbacks. It's big and heavy. It uses 120 volts of power. I have a lot invested in it, and I'd rather just keep it here at home on the desk. And now Polyend seems to have read my mind with the play, because it has the tactile buttons that I liked so much with the launchpad, the ability to play samples I was using the 1010 Bitbox for, and it has all of those crazy aspects of the sequencer with chants and random and all that stuff inside of here. Plus, it has effects and a lot of other things that we'll get to. So let's take a look at the Polyend play. A disclaimer before we start. Polyend has sent me the play for a review, but they didn't tell me what to say. So anything I say here is my own opinion after using it for a few weeks. And after using it for a bit, I've begun to see the philosophy behind it, because I'm usually confronted with thousands of sounds and possibilities from the VSTs on my computer. And I get something called creative paralysis, where I just sit there and don't make anything, and then I check Twitter and all that stuff. And I think the play is the cure for that. First of all, let's take a look at the unit itself. On the back, we have the power button, USB-C, an SD card for transferring files and storing, and you have MIDI in and MIDI out in your audio out jack. And on the front, you have the display here divided into 2 parts. And as you use the 15 encoders, it's almost knob per function. You switch between the 2 segments of the screen by double tapping on the encoders. So for instance, for the sample encoder here, you choose the folder there at the bottom, and then you double tap and you can choose the specific sample on top. Or you can use the 2 screen buttons to switch between the 2 segments of the display, and then use this main encoder right here to change values. And you have live record, play, and perform. Changes it into a performance grid that does the D-Blue glitch type of thing. So that's 30 functions there, and then you have function buttons here for fill, delete, changing it to the 8 tracks of MIDI, because you got 8 tracks of audio and 8 tracks of MIDI. Then you have save and reset, copy and paste. View is for viewing this kind of a chromatic keyboard. And then you have your silicone pads. Essentially, you have 16 by 8 here that you're going to put your trigs on. Then you have these 4 by 8 here that you're going to use as function buttons: mute, solo, variation, select. And you can also use them to look at the different pages of 16. And so you can have 64 steps if you want to. So if you hit Shift, now what we're seeing is that these tracks have one page, and this fourth track here has 4 pages. So the fourth track has 64 steps. Then you can view what is on each of those pages. It has an intended protocol for quickly coming up with a beat. The first step being pick and place, where you pick a sample, place it on the grid, and if you want to take that to its highest level at that stage, you can have it write the beat pattern for you if you want to. The second stage is select and adjust, where you use the touch capacitive encoders and almost a knob per function there to change countless parameters. And then the final stage is playback and perform, where you can have various types of playback like independent track direction and length and forward and reverse and various types of pixelizer Tetris skipping around of the cursor. And then you have this dedicated performance grid where you can interact with all the effects at one time and do retrigger, shuffle, crush, IDM, and jungle type of effects, and many other things. So getting into it here, what we're going to do is go in and start a new project. There, so just that quickly, we created a blank slate to work with. To name the project, we can go to File, Save Project As, and then Save. And now the silicone buttons become a typing keyboard. And now we gotta load some samples in here using packs. You can have 255 samples for a total of 6 minutes of 16-bit samples. And this device is in mono, but it'll convert your stereo samples. The automatic beat creation features of the Play use the naming of the folders inside the sample pack to know which sounds to pick from. So if you make your own sample pack, you need to have a kick folder, snare folder, and hi-hat folder for the algorithms to work. Okay, now that the samples are loaded in, I'm going to hit back a few times. And this is our main working screen. And so we're going to do what Polyend suggests, which is the pick and place. And so we'll touch on the sample encoder. And if we hit it a couple of times there, we can get into the sample folder and we can audition the sounds as we go through. And we probably want to do the kick first. Going back to the upper segment of the display there, now we can choose the different samples. I like number 5. And so I've picked the sample. Now I'm going to place it. And I can play it. Change my tempo just by touching the encoder. I have found that it doesn't, that now I'm ready to work on the second row, but it is still thinking that I'm working with the kick. So you have to keep changing the sample, and you can just hold down on one of these and then start changing your sample. We want to go now probably to doing the snare. So I'll fill those in. And next we want to do the hi-hat, so I'll hold down one in the third row here. And now we can throw in some swing just by using this, double tapping this. And as I said, these are for functions, and so if you want to select a whole row, you can use this select row here. And now I have selected that whole row. And now I can adjust the swing. Now, if you want to use the highest level of the algorithm to help you populate that, you can select all three and you can use this fill function. And then you can choose beat. And then you choose the type of beat that you want. Here we're working with a hip hop kit, so I'll say hip hop 3 and I'll hit fill. I'll change the fill type to Euclidean. And let's try filling the snare in. We could choose 7 events to fill in here on the snare. And the thing about the filling the Euclidean pattern is that it fills whatever's on the clipboard. And so you might get an unexpected result if you don't try and control the clipboard. So if I'm going to fill the snare in with Euclidean, I'm not really sure what is on the clipboard now. But if I hold down the first trig there till it turns blue and hit sample, I can see what is going to fill. Now the snare is on the clipboard, and so when I select that track and I hit fill, it's filling with snares. I can also fill it just with random hits. I can adjust the density, so I'll put it at 50%. Fill it. Now we'll move on to maybe a house chord. To fill in the house chord, we could use the keyboard that comes up to play chromatically. Had to do the obligatory amen break chopping there, and you have to do it a little differently on the play. Okay, what I did was I made 16 separate samples of the amen break, and this is able to randomize them in various ways. And so the first step, I use chance to have it always to play the step. But the second one says always random sample it. So it's picking one of those amen samples there. So I can make sure that I get a kick on the first one, and these various ones I can randomize them. Then it also has various types of repeats it can do. Like in jungle, you'll hear a certain type of repeat where it'll pitch up or down or things like that. So it has that type of jungle effects under repeat type. You can select a whole bunch of different types. And then it just kind of makes its own drum and bass. And then I have a polyphonic synth playing down here. And the way you can play polyphonically is by playing a note per track and let them kind of overlap and wash over. With a typical house tune, you'll probably have a house chord that might play once every 16 steps, and it'll go maybe up 2 semitones, down a few semitones, and then return. But on the play, you can put it all right here on the first page. You don't have to go into making several pages because you can do a clock division. So I've put the house chord right on that page, and let's listen to it. So it's playing way too fast. But I can select that whole thing and I can hit the tempo knob, which also does track speed. And if I set that to 1/4 the speed, listen to what happens. The beauty of the clock division. See how the cursor's kind of jumping around on that? What that is the play mode is set to something called go-go. And without that, you could go forward, you could go reverse. But I like go-go. Also has a little bit of swing on it. In fact, this whole beat has the 60% swing on it. See, that tap was filled with Euclidean. And I can fill the rim tap with various types of Euclidean. Gives it a little tiny bit of Latin flavor. Oh, that sounds good. You can go crazy with that Euclidean. Oh, I love that. Let's check out some of the effects now. And I'll solo out that rim tap. And we've got a reverb and delay we can use right here. And the delay. Now the parameters for those are found on the Shift Master Effects. So you can choose various presets for the reverb and delay. You can also choose various EQs. You can sidechain and use saturation. And I'm using sidechain on here. And you control that right here on the encoder. That's master volume and limiter at the same time. So I'll mess with that side chain a little bit. Now I'll just talk for a second about the sample editing capabilities of it. They're very limited on this. It's basically designed for you to put your samples into it, not make them on this device. So it doesn't record samples, and it only has rudimentary controls like sample start and end, sample attack, sample decay. It's pretty amazing the creative potential of this move function here. So if I select my kick track and I'll select this rim tap in, check this out. I'm going to hit save. And now I can do anything I want and return to that state. So let me turn the move a little bit. Has a completely different feel. Then I can just return. Change the track length a bit. And then move within that. And return. You can select portions of a track by holding down Shift, and then you hold the first and last button that you want to select a segment, and you can reverse samples by making the start the end and the end the start. So that aspect could be under play. And now we have perform, where we have this grid here, and you could choose various effects to play. And if you saw in the video earlier, I had little pieces of tape on the ones that I wanted to use. Well, let's just run through what they do. These are going to change the pitch of it. Then we got filtering, low pass, high pass, overdrive, bit depth, re-triggers, different types of triggers. And these are awesome with jungle rhythms. Still more types of repeats. Delays. More delays. Reverbs. Loops. Panning loops and stuff. Now, during a performance, you can tweak the settings to total chaos and then return again. So while I'm playing along here, I can just hit save anywhere I want to. Now I can start tweaking the settings. Then I simply hold Shift and hit reset. I'm back where I was. You can create variations of each track. So I can copy this over to the variation, and then I can make a reverse of the whole thing. So let's take a look at the variations by using these function buttons over here. And we can copy and paste really easily just by holding down the first button there and then hitting the second button. So that copied that. And now I will select all those and reverse them. What happens here? Then at any time I can use, any one of the reverse variations. There's a song mode, and what you do is you put the patterns as you want them played in order, and then they'll loop back around. So I'll hit shift play. Goes right into the next pattern. So I hit shift and the MIDI button to get into the MIDI screen. Now here we are with 8 tracks of MIDI. And now the 15 encoders are used for MIDI functions. Each track can still play in these really cool ways like forward, reverse, first steps, and all that. And you can have independent track length for the 8 tracks. You can have the chance functions and the randomization of like the filter CC. And you could do micro move of certain tracks to humanize them. And over here is where you set up your CCs. You go into CC mapping and jack channel 1, and your synthesizer's manual will probably tell what CC does what. I looked it up in my AFX station manual, and cutoff is 16. So I set this to 16. I've got the Polyend Play MIDI Sequencer controlling my AFX station. And it's also got CC controls, so it's randomizing the filter on the AFX station. So now the pros and cons. For the pros, it would be great for beginners to start making music right away on the Play, where other sample players out there might be better suited to an experienced user. The Play has many of the functions available right on the front panel encoders, and this is kind of unusual. It has the tactile buttons where you can see each trig on all 8 tracks at once, and this kind of sets it apart from other sample players as well. It has composing tools where you can take a plain vanilla beat and end up with an unexpected result with algorithms that work behind the scenes to make it sound like a specific genre or whatever, as opposed to the complete chaos that results from just purely random things. And it has play modes such as backwards and very specialized ones like the one I showed, go-go or ping pong types of play and other types of independent track play. It also has clock divisions and multiplications where one track can be playing at a quarter the speed of the other. And it has the performance grid with all the effects under your hands right there at one time and synced to the beat. And now for some cons. As I said, I've been using the vector to trigger the Bitbox Micro. And what the Play is missing in that scenario is a sample editor with slice markers, where you could make a drum kit from a single sample. And I'd like to see a few LFOs and a few envelopes, because this would go a long way to creating instruments out of samples. And I'd like to see all the parameters for the reverb and delay rather than only presets. I think the beat fill is a strong feature on here which could be made a lot better. To me, it needs 6 drums, a bass line, and a house chord to fill out the 8 tracks. So you could start with a foundational complete song and then use the outrageous features of the play to make it totally different and something all your own. And I came up with an idea for a new mode where every time there's a trigger on track 1, it would drive track 2 forward 1 step. And I've always used that on the TR-808 to drive the SH-101 sequencer, and it never fails to come up with some very interesting bass lines. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up as the first video on this. I'll probably have some in the future. I'm going to try to hook it together with my Polyend tracker, see what I could do with those two together. I'll put the 16 cuts that I did of the Amen break on my Patreon. So if you want to load those in here and mess around with the random function, you can do that. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.